Have you ever wondered what it truly means to treat someone with respect, no matter their role? Imagine a moment where someone's character is tested, and the outcome leaves everyone stunned. Today, we're diving into a story that will challenge how you see the people who serve you every day, and there's a twist you won't see coming. Stay with us until the end, and I promise you'll walk away with a perspective that could change how you interact with the world around you. It all started on a regular afternoon in a bustling grocery store. The hum of shopping carts, the beep of cash registers, and the chatter of customers filled the air. Amid the organized chaos, a young grocery clerk stood at the checkout counter, diligently scanning items with a polite smile. To anyone watching, he was just another employee doing his job, blending into the rhythm of the store. But little did they know, he was far more than he seemed. Enter the customer, a sharply dressed man in his 40s, exuding an air of entitlement as he strolled into the store. His eyes darted around impatiently as he joined the checkout line, tapping his foot as if every second he waited was a personal offense. From the moment he stepped up to the counter, his tone was curt, his words sharp. "Can you move any slower?" he snapped, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "I don't have all day, you know." The clerk, calm and collected, simply nodded and continued scanning the items with the same quiet efficiency. He didn't retaliate, didn't flinch, even as the customers' complaints grew louder. Around them, other shoppers began to notice. Whispers floated through the air as people exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from disapproval to unease. What happened next would leave the entire store in stunned silence. But to understand why this moment was so impactful, you need to see how the story unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. The tension in the air was palpable as the man's frustration boiled over. He slammed a loaf of bread onto the counter with a loud thud, drawing even more attention. "I don't know how people like you even get hired," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Can't you do anything right?" The young clerk didn't look up. His hands moved steadily, scanning each item and placing it into the bag with care. "I'm sorry for the delay, sir," he said softly, his tone polite but firm. "We're doing our best to get everyone through as quickly as possible." But the apology only seemed to fuel the man's anger. "Your best?" he scoffed, letting out a bitter laugh. "If this is your best, no wonder you're stuck working here. I mean, look at you barely keeping up with a simple job. Pathetic." A few customers shifted uncomfortably in the line. One woman muttered under her breath, "There's no need for that." But the man didn't seem to care or even notice. His focus was entirely on the clerk, as if humiliating him was some sort of personal mission. The young man's face reddened slightly, but he remained composed. "Thank you for your feedback, sir," he replied evenly, his voice steady despite the rising humiliation. "I'll make sure to improve." For a moment, the man paused, seemingly taken aback by the clerk's calm demeanor. But his momentary hesitation quickly gave way to more complaints. He began criticizing everything: the way the bags were packed, the pace of the transaction, even the clerk's appearance. "Do you even care about your job?" he barked, leaning forward as if to emphasize his words. The young man simply nodded, his eyes briefly meeting the customers. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a quiet strength that seemed to say more than words ever could. Around them, the line grew longer, and the murmurs of discontent grew louder. Shoppers exchanged glances, some visibly annoyed at the man's behavior, others looking at the clerk with sympathy. Yet, no one intervened. What no one knew, not even the man himself, was that this quiet clerk wasn't just an employee, and the truth about who he was and what he stood for was about to turn this entire situation on its head. Stay with us, because the moment this rude customer learns the truth, everything changes. The rude customer wasn't finished. If anything, he seemed emboldened by the clerk's calmness, mistaking it for weakness. His voice grew louder, his insults sharper, as though he wanted to ensure everyone in the store could hear him. "You know, people like you should be grateful for these kinds of jobs," he sneered, waving his hand dismissively. "Without them, you'd probably be out on the streets. I mean, let's be honest, this is probably the best you'll ever do." The words hung in the air, heavy and cutting. A few shoppers gasped audibly, their faces showing a mix of disbelief and disgust. An elderly man near the back of the line shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable," while a young mother whispered to her child, "That's not how we treat people." Still, the clerk remained composed. He carefully placed a carton of eggs into the bag, making sure not to break them, before looking up at the customer with a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I appreciate your patience, sir," he said, his voice steady. "Your total is $48.72. But the customer wasn't ready to pay just yet. "Patience," he snapped. "You think I'm being patient? This is the worst service I've ever seen, honestly. You should be fired for how incompetent you are." The murmurs from the other customers grew louder. One man stepped forward slightly, as though he was about to intervene, but the young clerk raised a hand subtly, signaling that he had it under control. "Again, I'm sorry you feel that way," the clerk replied, his voice still calm. "I'll do my best to improve." The customer rolled his eyes dramatically. "Do better. You don't even know the meaning of the word," he said, reaching into his wallet with an exaggerated sigh. "People like you are the reason this world's going downhill." For a moment, the store seemed to hold its breath. The other shoppers stood frozen, waiting to see how the clerk would respond. But instead of reacting to the insult, the young man simply handed the customer his receipt and said, "Thank you for shopping with us, sir. Have a great day." But the encounter wasn't over, not by a long shot, because as the customer turned to leave, his eye caught something that would stop him in his tracks. But the encounter wasn't over, not by a long shot, because as the customer turned to leave, his eye caught something that would stop him in his tracks. Default text. What he saw in the revelation that followed would change everything. Don't go anywhere, because the next part of this story will leave you speechless. The customer didn't leave right away. Instead, he lingered near the exit, muttering under his breath as he stuffed his receipt into his pocket. Something about the clerk's calm demeanor seemed to irritate him even more, as though his insults hadn't landed the way he intended. Turning back toward the counter, he raised his voice once again. "You know what? I'm not done with you," he barked, marching back toward the register. The other customers stepped aside, watching the scene unfold with a mix of disbelief and discomfort. The clerk, still standing behind the counter, looked up with the same polite expression. "Is there something else I can help you with, sir?" he asked. The man pointed an accusing finger at him. "Help me? You can barely help yourself," he snapped. "I want to speak to your manager. Someone needs to know how useless you are at your job." A few gasps rippled through the crowd, and someone whispered, "Does he not realize what he's doing?" Another shopper shook their head, clearly disgusted by the man's behavior. The clerk paused for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, sir," he said, his voice as steady as ever. "Please wait here. I'll call someone to assist you." Default text. He stepped away from the counter, leaving the customer to fume. Meanwhile, the murmurs among the shoppers grew louder. One woman leaned over to the person next to her and said, "That poor guy, he's handled this so well." But as the clerk disappeared into the back, something curious happened. A middle-aged supervisor approached the customer, offering a polite smile. "Is there an issue, sir?" she asked. "Yeah, there's an issue," the man snapped. "Your employee back there is completely incompetent. He's slow, disrespectful, and clearly not cut out for this job. You need to do something about him." The supervisor's smile didn't waver. "I understand, sir," she said. "But before we take any further steps, there's someone else you should speak to." She turned toward the back of the store, where the young clerk was now returning. Only this time, his demeanor had shifted. He stood taller, his quiet confidence more pronounced, as though he was stepping into a role he was meant to play. "Allow me to introduce myself," the clerk said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Alex, the owner of this grocery chain." The customer's jaw dropped. The entire store fell silent. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifted completely. What happened next would leave everyone in the story thinking everything they had just witnessed. Stay with us, because the story isn't over yet and the best part is still to come. The store seemed frozen in time as Alex, the humble grocery clerk, revealed his true identity. For a brief moment, the rude customer simply stared at him, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You're joking," the man stammered, his tone suddenly uncertain. He glanced around, as if expecting someone to confirm this was all a prank. But the other customers, who had been silently watching, only nodded in quiet affirmation. "I assure you, sir," Alex said, his voice steady, "I'm not joking. I own this store, along with several others in the region. And while I don't usually mention that, I think it's important in situations like this to remind people of something. The man's face flushed crimson. I didn't realize ... double quotes he began, but Alex gently held up a hand to stop him. That's the point, Alex said, his tone firm but not unkind. You didn't realize who I was, and it shouldn't matter. Whether I'm the owner of this chain or just an employee trying to do their job, I deserve the same respect as anyone else. The crowd of onlookers nodded in agreement. A few even began to clap softly, their approval of Alex's words clear. The customer shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting his earlier behavior. I didn't mean ... double quotes the man started again, but Alex interrupted, this time with a slight smile. It's okay, he said. I'm not here to humiliate you, but I do hope this moment makes you think. Every person you encounter, whether they're bagging your groceries or running a company, deserves kindness and respect. We all have a role to play, and none of us are above anyone else. The man looked down at his shoes, his bravado completely gone. You're right, he muttered, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. Alex nodded, apology accepted. But remember, it's not just about apologizing to me. It's about carrying that lesson forward to everyone you meet. Default Tech's crowd began to clap more enthusiastically now, a few people even cheering. The rude customer, clearly humbled, gave a small nod and quietly stepped out of the store. As he left, Alex turned back to the register, resuming his work as though nothing had happened. But for everyone else in the store, the moment was unforgettable, a powerful reminder of the value of humility and respect. And as Alex continued scanning groceries, one thing was clear. His leadership wasn't about titles or power. It was about showing grace in the face of adversity and inspiring others to do the same. As the door swung shut behind the customer, the store erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Some customers whispered to one another about how Alex had handled the situation, while others simply stood in awe, reflecting on what they had just witnessed. Alex, unfazed by the commotion, turned his attention back to the remaining customers. His demeanor was calm, his smile genuine, as though the entire incident hadn't just happened. But then, one of the shoppers, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stepped forward. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying a mix of admiration and curiosity. That was ... incredible. I don't think I've ever seen someone handle something like that with so much grace. How did you stay so calm? Alex paused for a moment, considering her question. I think it comes down to remembering why I started this business in the first place, he replied. I've worked every position in this store: cashier, stocker, even janitor. I know how hard these jobs can be and how much effort goes into them. It's easy to judge someone when you don't understand their struggles, but I've been there, and I believe everyone deserves respect, no matter their role. His words resonated deeply with the customers. A young man near the back of the line spoke up. I've worked in retail before, he said. It's not easy. People think it's just scanning items, but there's so much more to it. Alex nodded. Exactly. Every role in this store is vital. Without the team here, there wouldn't be a store to run. That's why I make it a point to step into these roles regularly, to remind myself of what it takes and to show my team that I value their work. Another shopper, an older gentleman, chuckled and said, well, I think you just taught that guy a lesson he won't forget anytime soon. Alex smiled, but his expression was thoughtful. I hope so, he said, but more importantly, I hope it inspires everyone to treat people with kindness. You never know what someone is going through or who they really are. The atmosphere in the store had completely shifted. What had started as a tense and uncomfortable confrontation had transformed into a moment of unity and reflection. Thank you, the kind-eyed woman said, her voice soft but sincere. Not just for how you handled that, but for reminding us all to be better. Alex nodded humbly. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. And with that, he returned to the register, ready to continue his work. But for the customers in that store, the lesson he had shared would linger long after they left. The rude customer didn't leave the store immediately. Instead, he lingered just outside the door, pacing back and forth with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The look on his face wasn't one of anger anymore, it was regret. He glanced back through the glass doors, watching Alex interact with the other customers, his demeanor as calm and composed as ever. Finally, after a moment of hesitation, the man took a deep breath and walked back inside. The hum of the store quieted slightly as shoppers noticed his return. Some exchanged wary glances, wondering if he would stir up more trouble. But this time, his steps were slower, his posture less aggressive. He approached Alex, who had just finished bagging groceries for another customer. Alex looked up, his expression neutral, and waited for the man to speak. The customer's voice faltered, and he cleared his throat. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. The words hung in the air, surprising everyone within earshot. The man continued, his voice quieter now, almost humbled. I was out of line. I didn't know who you were. And I shouldn't have treated you like that, no matter what. Alex studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. Apology accepted, he said simply. But the man wasn't done. I mean it, he said, his tone earnest. You were right. It shouldn't matter who you are, whether you own the store or just work here. I was rude, and I made assumptions. That's on me. A few customers nearby smiled at the unexpected turn of events, and one even gave the man an encouraging nod. I appreciate you saying that, Alex replied. His voice was steady but kind. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. But remember, it's not about me. It's about how we treat everyone every day. The man nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. You're right. I've got some work to do on that. Alex extended his hand. We all do. It's a process. But what matters is that you're willing to change. The man hesitated for a moment, then shook Alex's hand firmly. Thank you, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. As he turned to leave, the tension that had hung over the store seemed to dissipate entirely. The customers who had witnessed the exchange felt a sense of closure and maybe even a little hope. For the man, it wasn't just an apology. It was the beginning of a lesson he would carry with him long after he left the store. And for Alex, it was another small victory in his mission to remind people of the power of kindness and respect. As the customer exited the store for the second time, this time with a quieter, humble demeanor, the atmosphere inside was markedly different. The tension that had hung thick in the air earlier was now replaced with a sense of warmth and camaraderie. It wasn't just a single incident anymore, it had become a shared experience that everyone in the store would remember. One by one, the customers approached Alex, not just to check out their groceries, but to express their admiration. That was incredible, a young man said, setting his basket on the counter. The way you handled that ... I don't think I could have stayed that calm. Alex chuckled softly as he scanned the items. It's not always easy, he admitted, but I've learned that responding with anger only escalates things. Staying calm helps keep the situation under control, and sometimes it even helps people see things differently. Another customer, an elderly woman with a gentle smile, chimed in. You didn't just teach him a lesson, she said. You taught all of us something important today. Alex looked up from the register, his expression thoughtful. I hope so, he said, because respect isn't just about big moments like this. It's in the little things we do every day, how we talk to the cashier, how we treat the janitor, even how we greet strangers. The woman nodded, her smile widening. The world needs more people like you, she said warmly. As the line moved forward, more customers shared their thoughts, their words carrying a common theme: gratitude. Alex listened to each one, his humility evident in the way he responded. Meanwhile, the employees who had witnessed the incident were equally inspired. A stalker in his early 20s approached Alex during a brief lull in the line. Hey boss, he said shyly. I just wanted to say that was really cool. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you stood up for all of us. Alex gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. We're a team, he said, and teams look out for each other. Remember that, no matter what happens. The ripple effect of the incident was undeniable. Shoppers left the store that day with more than just their groceries. They carried a renewed sense of empathy and respect. And for the employees, it was a reminder that their work mattered, that they were valued, and that they were part of something bigger. What had started as a moment of humiliation had transformed into a powerful lesson, one that would linger in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Word of the incident spread quickly through the local community. By the next day, customers who hadn't been in the store were already talking about it. Some had heard about Alex's calm handling of the rude customer through friends, while others saw posts about it online. I saw the whole thing, one shopper wrote in a local Facebook group. The way the owner handled it was nothing short of inspiring. He didn't raise his voice, didn't retaliate, just calmly stood his ground and turned the situation into a teachable moment. Comments poured in beneath the post, with people sharing their own stories of encountering kindness and respect in unexpected places. "We need more leaders like this," one comment read. Another said, "This is a reminder to treat everyone with dignity, no matter their job." At the store, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. Regular customers walked in with smiles, some going out of their way to thank Alex or the employees for their hard work. Even the staff seemed more confident, buoyed by the knowledge that their boss genuinely valued them. "Did you hear about what happened yesterday?" a woman asked the cashier as she unloaded her groceries. The cashier nodded, her eyes lighting up. "Yeah, I was here. It was something, wasn't it?" "It's more than something," the woman replied. "It's a reminder of how we should all act. I came in today just to say thank you to all of you. You're the heart of this place." For Alex, the ripple effects were humbling. He hadn't set out to create a spectacle or gain attention. In his mind, he'd simply done what felt right. But as more people reached out to share their appreciation, he realized how much impact a single moment of kindness could have. "It's amazing how one incident can spark so many conversations," Alex told one of his employees during a break. "If it helps people think twice before judging someone, then it was worth it." The employee grinned. "You've got the whole town talking, boss," he said, but in a good way. Alex laughed softly, shaking his head. "Let's just hope the message sticks," he said. "That's what really matters." The community, inspired by Alex's actions, began to rally around the store in small but meaningful ways. Customers left notes of gratitude at the counter. A local bakery sent over treats for the staff, with a note that read, "Thanks for reminding us all to be better." It was clear, this was more than just a story about a rude customer and a patient clerk. It was a story about humanity, about the power of respect, kindness, and the willingness to see the value in every person. The days following the incident were transformative, not just for the store but for the rude customer himself. He couldn't shake the memory of Alex's words or the way the crowd had reacted to his behavior. "I felt so small," he confided to a friend over coffee. "I've never been called out like that, and not even with anger. Just honesty. It made me see myself in a way I didn't like." His friend nodded, listening intently. "So what are you going to do about it?" That question lingered with him. For days, he replayed the incident in his mind, wondering how he could make amends not just to Alex, but to anyone he might have wronged with his arrogance and impatience. One afternoon, he returned to the grocery store. This time, he wasn't there to shop or cause trouble. He carried a box of pastries and a handwritten note, his steps hesitant but purposeful. Inside, the store was bustling as usual. Alex was at the register, assisting a line of customers with his usual calm efficiency. When he noticed the man approaching, Alex raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. The customer stopped a few feet away, holding out the box. "These are for you," he said, his voice steady but softer than before. "For you and your staff. It's not much, but I wanted to say thank you and sorry, again." Alex looked at the box, then back at the man. A small smile crossed his face. "That's very kind of you," he said. "Thank you." The man hesitated, then added, "You know, what you said that day, it really stuck with me. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I realized I've got some work to do on how I treat people. I want to do better." Alex nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's all anyone can ask," he said. "Acknowledging it is the first step. Change takes time, but the fact that you're here shows that you're serious about it." The man gave a small, grateful smile. "I am," he said, "and I hope it's not too late to start." Alex extended his hand, and the man shook it firmly. The moment felt like a full-circle resolution, not just for the two of them, but for the lesson that had rippled out from their initial confrontation. The staff, touched by the gesture, shared the pastries among themselves, and the note was pinned on the employee bulletin board. It read, "To the amazing staff of this store, thank you for your patience, your kindness, and your hard work. I'm sorry for my behavior and will strive to be better. You've inspired me more than you know." For the rude customer, this wasn't just an apology. It was a step toward becoming the kind of person Alex had reminded him and everyone else that we all have the potential to be. Behind the scenes, the employees of the grocery store were buzzing with renewed energy and pride. The incident with the rude customer, and the way Alex had handled it, had left a profound impact on them. "Can you believe how he stood up for us?" Maria, one of the cashiers, said as she stocked a shelf. I've worked in retail for years, and I've never had a boss like him. James, a younger employee who had just started a few months ago, nodded. I was right there when it happened, he said. Honestly, I thought he was just going to let that guy walk all over him. But he didn't, and he still kept his cool. The staff had always known Alex was different. He wasn't the kind of owner who stayed in an office all day or avoided the day-to-day grind of the store. He worked alongside them, filling in wherever he was needed, and never hesitated to listen when they had concerns. But this incident had taken their respect for him to a whole new level. I think what really got me, said Sarah, a stalker who'd been at the store for years, was that he didn't just defend himself. He made it about all of us, about respect for everyone. Her coworker, Michael, grinned. Did you see the guy's face when Alex said he owned the place? Priceless. They laughed. But the conversation soon turned serious again. It's not just about what he said, Maria added. It's about what he does every day. He treats us like we matter, and that's rare. A lot of places talk about teamwork, but here, you actually feel it. James leaned on his cart of supplies. I've worked in places where the managers would have just ignored that whole thing, he said. But Alex, he turned it into a moment for everyone to learn something. I mean, who does that? Their admiration wasn't just talk. In the days following the incident, the employees worked with a renewed sense of purpose. They went out of their way to help customers, greeted everyone with genuine smiles, and even supported one another more than usual. For Alex, this was the real reward. He hadn't handled the situation with the customer to win applause or prove a point. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. But seeing the impact it had on his team was more meaningful than any public praise. If we treat each other with respect, Alex said during a quick staff meeting later that week, it shows in everything we do. Customers feel it. They see the difference. And it starts with how we treat one another here, every single day. The employees left that meeting inspired, ready to continue building the kind of workplace where respect wasn't just a policy, it was a way of life. As weeks passed, the story of Alex's handling of the rude customer became something of a legend in the community. It was discussed at local cafes, in parks, and even in the halls of nearby schools. People admired the way Alex had stayed calm in the face of confrontation. But it was more than just admiration. It sparked a shift in how people interacted with one another. One afternoon, a young man walked into the store, looking slightly nervous but determined. He approached Alex at the register, his hands in his pockets, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Hey, I wanted to thank you, the young man said. I don't know if you remember me, but I was the one who was rude to you a few weeks ago. I was the guy who... Alex cut him off with a smile. I remember you, he said, his voice warm. How have you been? The young man took a deep breath. I've been better. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and honestly, it really stuck with me. I realized how wrong I was to treat you that way, and I've been working on changing how I approach people. I've even started being more patient with my coworkers, my friends, everyone. I guess I just wanted to thank you for showing me that there's a better way to be. Alex nodded, genuinely moved. It's not always easy to change, he said, but it sounds like you're making an effort, and that's what counts. You're doing the right thing. The young man smiled sheepishly. I hope so. I just wanted you to know that I've learned it from it. Alex extended his hand, and the young man shook it firmly. Thank you for coming back, Alex said. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and that's the first step to becoming better. The young man left the store feeling lighter, knowing that he had made amends and was moving in the right direction. This wasn't the only instance of change. Other customers who had witnessed the original incident came forward with similar stories, small moments of self-reflection, of apologizing for things they had said or done in the past. The community was slowly, but surely, transforming. Alex's quiet act of standing up for himself had ignited a ripple effect of kindness, humility, and respect. It was clear that his message was spreading one person at a time. And while the incident with the rude customer had been a defining moment, it wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something bigger, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could change the world, one person at a time. Months passed, and the ripple effect that began in the grocery store continued to grow. Alex's actions that day had become more than just a local story. It had sparked a lasting change in the community, a shift toward empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. People were kinder to one another, more patient, and quicker to offer a helping hand. Alex, however, didn't seek the attention or praise. For him, the reward was in seeing the subtle transformations in the everyday interactions around him. He watched as customers greeted one another with a smile, as employees treated each other with greater consideration, and as even the occasional difficult shopper seemed to approach the store with a more open attitude. One evening, as Alex locked up the store, he paused for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened. It had started with one difficult moment, one confrontation, but it had blossomed into something much bigger. He remembered the words of his staff, who had told him that they'd never felt so valued, so supported. He thought of the customer who had come back to apologize, the young man who had worked to change his behavior. He thought of the quiet, everyday acts of kindness that had multiplied since that day. Alex smiled to himself. It wasn't just about the incident anymore, it was about the long-term effect of creating a space where respect was the foundation of everything. As he turned off the lights and prepared to leave for the night, he felt a sense of pride. The grocery store had become more than just a place to buy food, it had become a symbol of how powerful kindness and respect could be when put into action. And though the world could be full of challenges, Alex knew that if everyone took just one extra moment to treat others with dignity, they could create a legacy of respect that would continue to echo through their lives and the lives of those around them. And though the world could be full of challenges, Alex knew that if everyone took just one extra moment to treat others with dignity, they could create a legacy of respect that would continue to echo through their lives and the lives of those around them. That was the real lesson, the one that transcended any single moment. It was the understanding that kindness, humility, and respect weren't just ideals, they were choices we could make every day, in every interaction. Alex had started with a simple decision to treat others with dignity, and that one decision had sparked a lasting change. As Alex turned off the lights and locked the door to the store, he felt a deep sense of pride. The ripple effect of his actions had spread throughout the community, creating lasting change in the way people treated each other. What had started as a single, difficult moment had transformed into something much bigger, something that would continue to inspire others. In the end, Alex didn't just change the course of a single day. He sparked a movement of kindness and respect that would live on long after. He'd shown that even the smallest act of standing up for oneself could create a world of difference. If you've enjoyed this story and believe in the power of kindness, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay updated with more stories that inspire change. Let's keep spreading positivity and respect, one story at a time. Thanks for watching, and remember, kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything.